When a mommy and a mommy or a daddy and a daddy love each other, then... Welcome everyone to Powered and Protected by Rainbows. I am of course your host, Matt Haslam. On today's episode, we're talking about sexual education and SGAs in our school system nowadays. And just as a spoiler alert, it's a system which needs a lot of fixing. But for you parents out there who might be fearing your children listening to this episode and learning things before you're ready for them to, please know that this is a family-friendly show and I will not be covering any specifics here. This will not be a how-to guide. I'm sorry. With that said, on to the episode. Back when I was in high school, we had mandatory health class, but we were allowed to take that class whenever we wanted, as long as we passed it before graduation. And while that is a problem in and of itself, with many straight teenagers already needing to know the basics long before that point of the last semester of their senior year, that's actually not an issue we're going to be discussing today. In health class, we merely learned how to take care of our bodies, and didn't really get taught too much of the more relationship health side of things. For those lessons, we were forced to take an elective course, meaning it wasn't required before we graduated. And this elective course specifically focused on sexual education. And no, before you ask, we didn't get assigned a bag of flour. Our school didn't have the budget, I guess. Now, I was very fortunate in my public high school to have had a wonderful teacher for this class, and the time to take an elective such as sex ed, along with another one on CPR training. So in many ways, I considered myself very well educated on health back then. Our wonderful teacher, which for purposes of keeping her identity private from this public forum, I'm just going to call her Mrs. B from here on out. She would spend Monday through Thursday teaching us what was in our textbooks. But every Thursday in the beginning of class, she handed out a sheet of blank printer paper to each of us. Then we had to write down something on the blank paper by the end of class and hand it in. If we wanted, we can ask a question on whatever we were covering in that chapter of the textbook, or maybe even ask questions of our own. And it was completely anonymous, since even if you didn't have a question, everyone had to write something down and hand it in at the end of class on your way out the door. Then on Friday, Mrs. B would read off all of the questions in a random order, and answer all of them truthfully. It was wonderful for students who wanted to ask something, but were too embarrassed to raise their hands in class. But for 10 to 20% of her class, who were boys and girls just like me, we got all of our answers from these questions alone. You see, they never once covered gay sex in the textbooks, or the fact that if you're gay, that doesn't make you immune and in fact makes you more prone to get certain STIs, so you should still use protection. They never once mentioned any of it in a textbook, but rather all of us gay students had to learn how babies are made and things we won't ever have to know, when we could have spent that time learning how our relationships work instead, and maybe even getting some info on how we go about adopting, because no textbook ever mentions how gay couples can raise perfectly healthy kids as well. So every week I would submit questions, and after about 3 weeks, Mrs. B started recognizing my handwriting. For my handwriting and the subject matter of asking tons of gay relationship and sexual education questions, Mrs. B was maybe the first to realize what I never told anyone else back then. But she approached me after class and told me to ask as many questions as I needed, and even mentioned if there were too many questions for class, that she'd be happy to call in another teacher to supervise and answer even more after class. Many years after I graduated in 2010, my alma mater, Pottsville High School, started a Diversity Club, which meets after school and teaches diversity, whether that be on different cultures, religions, ethnicities, or sexualities. Another local high school in Stroudsburg, PA, is one of half of high schools across our country to start what's called an SGA, which stands for Straight Gay Alliance, or Sexual Gender Alliance Group. In fact, when I was filming their graduation this year for a local news broadcaster, the valedictorian and class president of their school mentioned marriage equality and this SGA club, and it was met with a warm round of applause.
We saw gay marriage become legalized in all 50 states.
Many other clubs, such as Avidum, the Acceptance Project, and the Gay Straight Alliance all have raised awareness about the prevalent issues in our world while providing a safe place where students can discuss and connect with others.
But all of these clubs meet once a month after school, so it's completely optional to attend. And therein lies the issue we face. Diversity clubs don't talk about LGBTQ exclusively, and it's not taught to everyone equally. It's all voluntary after school, and the meetings are sporadic. So if you need a question answered, you have to wait a whole month to get that answer. This past year, more than 39% of LGBTQ youth and more than half of transgender youth seriously considered suicide. And 2/3 of our youth report that someone tried to convince them to change their orientation or identity. 71% of LGBTQ youth reported discrimination, and 58% of trans youth reported problems using the appropriate bathroom, which coincided with their identity. But stats and facts mean nothing to some folks nowadays, so let's put a face to the issue. Meet 9-year-old Jamel Miles from Denver, Colorado. In August of this past school year, Jamel went back to 4th grade at Joe Shoemaker Elementary School and was so proud to tell his classmates what he just got done telling his mother earlier that week. That news, of course, was that he is gay. Like every one of us in the community, he had so much joy and pride in saying his truth for the first time in his life. For that fact alone, the fact that he merely liked other boys instead of girls, it took Jamel's classmates just 4 days to bully him so severely that Jamel ultimately took his own life just 4 days into his 4th grade year. And we can accept the bullcrap letter Denver Public Schools sent out to parents, but a letter doesn't bring change, nor will any change bring back Jamel. But change can prevent the next story like it. You see, I've been a long-time advocate for the Equality Act, forcing companies to hire and fire based on actual job qualifications rather than sexual identity, and forcing government housing programs to accept everyone, not just cisgender and straight folks. But that would merely change the equality climate in adults. Bigots would no longer have as much freedom to discriminate and punish LGBTQ members just for who they are. But let's face it, even if adults have a perfect world, eventually our kids will be the adults of tomorrow and we won't be here. So we'll have the same problem again and again. But in order to solve the systemic homophobia problem in America, all we need to do is educate. Youth television program companies are helping by putting gay characters in their shows. But some networks in the South are refusing to air those episodes for religious reasons. But for teenagers, we need to make gay sexual education mandatory, right alongside straight sex ed. Yeah, sure, teachers might get some odd looks, but they get those same looks when we talk about straight relationships. Not to mention the fact that it will normalize gay relationships by putting it on an equal platform as straight ones. If a straight student grows up knowing what straight sex is, but is never even taught what gay relationships are, then they automatically assume gay relationships are different and weird to have. Whereas if everyone is taught both relationships types, they know we have tons of similarities, but just different parts. One day those kids will grow up and look at everyone equally, not to mention that little boy or girl in class who's gay will also know they are included and they are normal. And they will know how it works for them when they grow up and start having boyfriends and girlfriends of their own. Teach the kids how to find more info on medication that they can take to match their true identity. Or maybe tell them how to be safe, therefore cutting down on the risk of AIDS and other STIs later in life. Because teaching kids how not to get pregnant isn't really a problem if you're gay. So many of our community's youth assume protection isn't needed, when it truly still is. Whether we admit it or not, we have a gay and trans rights crisis on our hands nowadays. No child should ever feel the need to kill themselves for any reason. And if you don't agree with me on that fact alone, then feel free to click off of this video because I'm okay with you not being a subscriber. But no kid should ever have to feel that way, or feel it's a better option than telling anyone their truth. We have lots of battles to fight and win when it comes to making our country a beautiful place and free place for all. But it means nothing if our next generation is being taught with the same horrible beliefs that not all men are created equal, and gay boys and girls are having to sit through lessons of how babies are made, but not hearing a word of their perfectly normal relationships as well. We aren't doing our job as a country if we're okay with little boys and girls killing themselves because they view it as an easier option than coming out and possibly getting bullied. And the worst part is, our youth are calling out and begging us for this education. They are starting SGAs in their schools and asking us to teach them, but 50% of schools don't have an SGA. And from our research, no school has mandatory gay sexual education at all. We're leaving it up to the internet and adult websites to teach our gay and trans youth how it all works, which isn't healthy by a long shot. So if you're a parent out there who wants your kids to learn and love equally, then talk to your school board and ask for gay relationships to be taught alongside straight ones. But this isn't just a school issue. You as a parent never know if your child is gay or trans until they decide to tell you. So when you're sitting in an already awkward conversation, telling your son or daughter all about the birds and the bees, be sure to tell them about the birds and the other birds or the bees and the other bees too. A child seeing you put gay relationships alongside straight ones as perfectly normal helps your child know not only how to be kind to everyone, but also, if they are gay themselves, it helps them know you will love them the same no matter what. Anyway, that's our episode for today. If you have any thoughts on today's topic and want to share your experiences, I encourage you to leave those in the comments down below, but please keep it PG as kids might be reading through. Also, while you're down there, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share this episode with others. I'm Matt Haslam, this has been PBR, and have a gay day everyone. Bye for now.